Misachika was often considered an unattractive loser until the most popular girl in school, Alya, fell in love with him. Alya wasn't just any popular girl, she was so well-liked that everyone stared at her and practically worshipped as the ground she walked on. One morning, the most popular guy in school tried to get her attention. However, Alya immediately rejected him, telling him she had zero interest in him, leaving him speechless and shattering his confidence. After this, the rest of the school lost any hope of dating her, because she had just publicly humiliated the most desirable boy in school. Later in class, Alya found Misachika asleep and woke him up by kicking him. She asked if he had been up all night watching recaps again. He admitted he had, but explained he had something important to do after watching. Alya assumed he had been on Twitter, but Misachika revealed he had been watching animerecaps. Alya called him insane, but Misachika had insisted that he was dedicated to his interests, even if it meant being seen as crazy. Alya stared at him as he yawned widely, and she said something in Russian. When he asked what it meant, she told him it meant he looked pathetic. Their first period was chemistry, a subject in which they had a lot of chemistry. Misachika realized he had forgotten his textbook and had to share with Alya. As the teacher lectured, Misachika struggled to stay awake. When he dozed off, Alya poked him with her pen, causing him to raise his hand. The teacher asked him a question and Misachika looked to Alya for help. She pointed to an answer, which he confidently repeated, but it turned out to be wrong. The teacher then asked Alya to answer and she quickly gave the correct response. Misachika felt betrayed and asked why she had set him up. Alya claimed she was pointing to the question number, but Misachika knew she was lying, especially with her mischievous smile. She repeated the word in Russian, which confused Misachika. When he asked what she said, it left him puzzled and frustrated. Alya often calls Misachika stupid, but he has a secret. He understands Russian. She's been calling him cute this whole time, and it's been driving him crazy trying to figure out what she really means. He keeps pretending that he doesn't understand her. Misachika learned Russian as a child while playing with his childhood friend, but he never imagined he'd be charmed by a Russian girl who doesn't know he can understand her. If he admitted his secret, she'd probably be so embarrassed she'd die, and he can't afford the funeral expenses. Later, Alya catches Misachika using his phone and reminds him that it's against the rules unless it's an emergency. He ignores her, so she grabs the phone to see what he's up to. When she sees he's looking at a picture of a silver-haired moon goddess, she gets annoyed and hands the phone back. Switching to Russian, she says her hair is silver too and calls him a cheer. Misachika understands this and gets flustered, but when he asks what she said, she calls him a game junkie. Misachika, distracted, starts explaining how he's not a true junkie since he doesn't have a Twitch stream yet. Alya looks away, realizing there's no hope for him. Later, Misachika is having lunch with his friends when they notice the student council walking in. Alya is the treasurer, Yuki is the spokesperson, and Maria, Alya's sister, is the secretary. The boys agree that the Kujo sisters are stunning. Maria, however, turns down everyone who asks her out, saying she already has someone. Alya tells Takashi he has no chance with Maria because his head is shaped like a doorknob. Takashi accuses Misachika of being arrogant just because he's friends with Alya. Meanwhile, the girls look around for a place to sit. When Yuki notices Misachika's uninterested look, she asks if she and her friend can sit with him and his friends. The boys agree, so the girls join them. Yuki sees that Misachika got the same food as her but then realizes it tastes terrible. She jokes about complaining to the student council, but Misachika warns her not to mix personal preferences with official matters. Yuki laughs and says she was just joking. At that moment, Alya gives Yuki a disdainful look and asks if they are friends. Yuki explains that she and Misachika have known each other since they were children because they went to the same preschool. When Misachika asks if Alya and Yuki are friends too, Yuki says she'd like to be, but Alya warns that being friends with her isn't fun. The boys decide to leave and take their lunch elsewhere, saying the girls are too overwhelming for them. After the boys leave, Yuki moves closer to Misachika and asks if he's thought about joining the student council. Misachika says he'd rather watch that terrible 2010 Airbender movie. Yuki tells Alya that Misachika used to be her vice president in middle school and that he's very capable. Alya, speaking in Russian, says she already knows that. Later, Yuki says goodbye and Alya comments that she's surprised that any girl would want to be friends with him. Misachika points out that Alya is his friend, which surprises her. She agrees and then suddenly walks away, leaving Misachika confused. The next day, Misachika dreams about the good old days when he used to play with a blonde Russian girl. This memory brings back nostalgic feelings for him, reminding him of simpler times. When Misachika wakes up, he remembers how dedicated he was to studying Russian just to talk to a girl, even though he can't recall her name. The next morning, Misachika arrives at class early and tidies up before anyone else gets there. Alya is the first to arrive and jokes that hell must have frozen over for him to wake up early. Misachika notices dirt on her socks and asks if she stepped in a puddle. She sits down and explains that a passing truck splashed mud on her. Suddenly, Alya changes the subject and asks that he'll join the student council. Misachika insists he'd rather watch recaps. Alya tries to ask something else but gets embarrassed and tells him to forget it. Then she starts to remove her socks, which makes Misachika feel nervous. Seeing his reaction, Alya gets an idea and asks him to get a spare sock from her locker. Misachika reluctantly agrees, but when she tells him to put it on her, he hesitates. She teases him, saying it would be a nice treat for him for helping her. Switching to Russian, Alya says it's for her reward too. Misachika starts to wonder if she's using him to relieve her stress. When he asks what she said, she tells him she called him a coward. Determined, Misachika grabs her foot and decides to put the sock on her as she asked. Alya starts freaking out, saying she wasn't ready, but Misachika tells her to stop squirming so he can put the sock on. However, he accidentally touches her in a sensitive area, so she immediately kicks him in the face, giving him a brief glimpse of heaven in the process. Misachika falls down, but he thinks it was worth it. Later, Alya gives him the cold shoulder, clearly upset. Misachika, feeling guilty, approaches her to apologize. Before he can get a word out, she calls him a leg fetish scum in Russian. After seeing his sincere regret, she softens a bit and tells him she's not really mad and apologizes for kicking him. When she tries to check if he's okay, he quickly deflects, making a joke about the glimpse of heaven. Alya is beyond embarrassed and punches him before running away. Determined to make things right, Misachika chases after her. They run around the school, weaving through crowds of students and darting down hallways. 10 minutes later, Misachika catches up to her and immediately apologizes for taking things too far earlier. He pulls out her favorite drink, offering it as a peace gesture. Alya, surprised and touched that he remembered her favorite drink, accepts it from him. She looks at him with a mix of frustration and amusement, her cheeks still flushed. Switching to Russian, she asks if he wants a sip, hinting at an indirect kiss. Misachika freezes, realizing the implication. His mind races, and he's torn between wanting to accept and fearing the awkwardness. In the end, he chickens out and pretends not to understand like he usually does. As usual, she changes the translation and laughs to herself, thinking he doesn't understand a word she's saying. The next morning, Yuki asks Misachika to help her clean the council room. He reluctantly agrees since he's not used to physical work, but he meets up with her anyway. They start chatting, but then Alya appears from behind some boxes, looking annoyed at how close Yuki and Misachika are. Misachika realizes Yuki probably set this up on purpose, knowing that Alya likes him. They start cleaning and Yuki keeps chatting, which seems to irritate Alya even more. Alya tells Misachika to pay more attention to the work. Yuki sees this as the perfect time to leave, so she excuses herself and goes out. Suddenly, Misachika hears Alya mumble in Russian, saying she wants some attention and telling him to come closer. Misachika, secretly understands Russian, is confused by her behavior. Luckily, they finish the cleaning quickly, and Misachika is about to leave when a tall senior enters the room. The senior is surprised to see the room so clean. Yuki tells him that Misachika helps, so the senior thanks Misachika and introduces himself as Ken, the president of the student council. Ken says he has heard a lot about Misachika from both Alya and Yuki, but Misachika feels uncomfortable and decides to leave. Ken stops him, insisting that since Misachika helped after school, he will buy him dinner. Misachika politely refuses, saying he was just helping friends. Before he can leave, Yuki jumps in and suggests that he accept the offer, since he would have to cook for himself at home anyway. Ken decides for them and also invites both Yuki and Alya to join them for dinner. Later that evening, they all go to a diner. Ken thanks Misachika again for helping with the council work. Yuki mentions that Misachika is good at physical tasks and finishes them quickly. She also says he is an expert negotiator. Ken immediately recognizes his talent and offers him a position on the student council. Misachika politely refuses, explaining that he has done the student council work since he didn't enjoy it in middle school. Ken agrees that it is a lot of work but mentions the benefits, like automatic recommendations to the best colleges. Despite this, Misachika shows no interest as he simply wants to watch recaps and enjoy life. Unfortunately for him, Yuki won't stop pushing him to run for student council president again, just like they did in middle school. He firmly refuses. Ken mentions that Yuki will have tough competition because Alya is also planning to run for president. Surprised, Misachika looks at Alya for confirmation and she nods, saying she will run against Yuki next year. Before they can discuss further, their food arrives. After dinner, they part ways with Ken and Yuki heading in one direction, leaving Misachika to walk Alya home. On the way, Misachika asks Alya if she is really going to run against Yuki, but Alya seems reluctant to talk about it and tells him she will go on her own from there. Misachika says goodbye and heads home, only to find Yuki sprawled on the couch reading a romantic novel. It turns out Yuki is actually Misachika's sister. but she pretends to be his love interest to make Alya jealous and more interested in him. He tells her he doesn't need her help and goes to bed. The next morning, Yuki wakes Masachika up by jumping on his bed, even though it's a Sunday. She drags him to a mall for breakfast, and then tries to get him to watch a movie with her. He refuses, and they head to a nearby clothing store. Noticing Yuki's changed behavior, he asks her what's going on. She tells him she saw Alya tailing them, so she's going to stop behaving like his sister. Before Masachika can respond, Yuki greets Alya warmly. Embarrassed, Alya pretends she just happened to be shopping and ran into them by coincidence. Yuki asks Alya if she has had lunch yet and invites her to join them at a restaurant. She then asks if Alya likes spicy food. Alya, who has only had mildly spicy curry before, claims she is fine with spices. Yuki tells her they are going to a ramen place that serves very spicy food and invites her along. Masachika decides to come clean and warns Alya that this restaurant's ramen is insanely spicy. Alya feels like Masachika is trying to push her away to be alone with Yuki, so she decides to join them anyway. They go to the ramen place, which scares Alya with its frightening appearance. Masachika warns her she's making a mistake, but Alya insists on joining them. They soon order ramen bowls. Alya notices Yuki dressed in boyish clothes and remarks on it. Yuki seizes the opportunity and jokes that she borrowed one of Masachika's shirts from that morning when they were in bed together. Masachika spits out his water, trying to explain, but Yuki interrupts, asking Alya how she likes the dish. The spice hits her immediately, but she pretends to be fine. Yuki and Masachika start eating, unfazed by the spice as they are used to it. Masachika hears Alya mumbling in Russian about how insanely hot it is and gets worried, asking her not to eat it and suggesting they get something else. Alya insists she likes the heat even though Masachika can see her tearing up. Eventually, unable to control herself, Alya screams loudly and runs out of the restaurant. Masachika follows Alya and finds her alone in a park. He asks if she is okay. Alya says she is fine, but Masachika offers to get her some ice cream, and she immediately agrees. He buys her a triple scoop, which she enjoys much more than the spicy ramen. While she is eating, Masachika asks why she wants to become the council president. This sours her mood and she tells him she just wants to try. He asks if she has a partner, but she replies that she doesn't, claiming she doesn't need one and can do it herself. He explains that she needs a vice president to run with her. She says she'll find a random person, put their name down, but mutters in Russian that she would want him to be her partner. After finishing her ice cream, Alya asks if Masachika has any plans and if he can help her shop for clothes. Masachika agrees, saying they are friends, which surprises her a bit. She wonders if he pities her because he thinks she can't beat Yuki. Determined, she angrily heads to the changing room, but gets nervous about his reaction. When she comes out in a new dress, Masachika immediately compliments her, saying she looks even prettier. This makes her happy and she goes back to try on more outfits, each time getting compliments from Masachika. Feeling confident, she tries on something more revealing. However, when she opens the curtains to pose, she sees Yuki has arrived. Embarrassed, she quickly closes the curtains, wanting to crawl into a hole. Later that evening, they head back together on the train. Alya is too frazzled to talk. When Yuki and Masachika's stop comes, they bid her goodbye and get off. Alya starts cursing herself for wearing something so revealing, worried Masachika will think badly of her. Suddenly, she realizes they got off at the same station and wonders if she should spy on them. That night, Alya comes home looking a bit down. Her sister Masha quickly hugs her and asks how her day was. Alya lazily says it was fine and heads to her room. Masha, not easily fooled, asks if something happened since Alya isn't acting like herself. Alya takes a deep breath and explains that she just met Masachika and his childhood friend. Masha smiles, realizing this is about a boy, and asks if Alya likes him. Alya quickly denies it, insisting they are just friends. Masha laughs and asks how this guy managed to catch her interest, considering she never liked being friends with lazy people and always preferred perfectionists. Alya recalls an incident from 6 years ago in Russia. She had a group project about local businesses and eagerly divided the tasks among her friends, planning everything diligently. She followed the schedule perfectly and collected data on several businesses alone on Sunday. But when she returned to school on Monday, she discovered that none of her friends had even started thinking about the project. She gets upset and tells her friends that the report will take a lot of time to write, but they seem unconcerned, saying they have a full week to work on it. Suddenly, the blonde girl notices Alya's notebook and sees that Alya has already written almost an entire essay. They tell her to relax because it's just a school assignment, but Alya, being a perfectionist, insists they take it seriously. This leads to a major argument with the blonde girl, who tells Alya to do it all by herself if she wants to be such a perfectionist, and then leaves. Later that evening, Alya stays late and continues writing the report, working on it every single day. When the results are finally announced, another group wins because their report was more cohesive. Alya holds back her tears, clutching the group work she did all alone. That day, as Alya walked home with tears in her eyes, she decided she would never depend on anyone again because they always disappointed her. After that, she passed a very difficult exam and transferred to a prestigious school in Japan. On her first day, she gave a speech at the ceremony, which made her popular right away. After the assembly, when class was about to start, she noticed Masachika for the first time, sleeping on his desk without a care in the world. She woke him up, telling him class was about to start, and he groggily complimented her speech. She introduced herself politely, expecting everyone at this prestigious school to be perfectionists like her. However, she soon realized that most students here were slackers too, and Masachika was the biggest slacker of all. He never brought the right books, was always behind in physical education, and slept through the entire math class. Feeling disappointed again, Alya withdrew into herself and stopped talking to others. As the seasons changed, the school festival arrived. The students divided tasks and started working, but even though they were behind, they were very relaxed and went home early. Alya, feeling alone, worked overtime sewing the banner. She cut herself again and put on a band-aid. Suddenly, the door opens and Masachika enters the room. Alya is surprised to see him after school hours, but he tells her she shouldn't overwork and should go home. At this point, Alya is irritable and tells him to mind his own business and she has a lot of work to do. Masachika reassures her that he has taken care of everything. He got permission for them to stay overnight at school and convinced some friends from the handicraft club to help with the festival preparations. Now there are many people who can assist. He tells her to relax and go home. Alya, feeling overwhelmed, starts tearing up and says she can't relax because she wants to make sure the festival is great and won't settle for anything less. She refuses to compromise on the quality of the work. Masachika then points out that she is putting all her efforts in the wrong place. He says that if she had focused on getting everyone to work together, it would have made things easier for her and involved all the students. Alya stands up and leaves the room, wondering what Masachika's problem is. The next day, everything changes. Masachika somehow motivates everyone to do their best for the festival. They start coming up with lots of ideas for attractions, staying late at school, having fun, and working together. Slowly, Alya begins to open up to her classmates again. When the festival day arrives, it's a huge success. Their attraction wins the Best Attraction award by a large margin. The festival ends with a student dance where Alya finds Masachika sitting alone. He asks why she isn't dancing, saying everyone would want to dance with her. She replies that she doesn't want to dance because every boy keeps bothering her about it. Masachika laughs and says people call her the Ice Princess because of her attitude. Alya says she doesn't like being called a princess because it makes her feel like people think she was born with everything, even though she has worked very hard for all her achievements. Masachika smiles and tells her he won't call her that. Alya then apologizes for snapping at him the other day and asks if there's anything she can do to show her gratitude. Masachika tells her she doesn't need to do anything as she was still the one who put in the most effort, but Alya insists that she needs to repay him for his kindness. Suddenly, a group of boys shows up and starts bothering Alya for a dance, pressuring her even though she doesn't want to. Masachika steps in, takes her arm, and runs with her to the grounds, asking her for a dance as a thank you. Back in the present, Masha says it sounds like the start of a beautiful love story, but Alya insists they are just friends because he is capable and gets things done. Masha isn't convinced and just smiles at her. The next morning, Masachika goes to the student council to cover for Yuki, who didn't come that day. There he meets Masha, who tells him she's heard a lot about him and needs help shopping for supplies. He agrees and she immediately thanks him and grabs his hand. Suddenly, Masha feels a familiar sensation as if she has met Masachika before and asks for his full name. When Masachika tells her, she realizes something but keeps it to herself. She then tells him in Russian that they should get moving. They walk to a shopping mall where Masha completely forgets her purpose and starts looking at stuffed toys for the student council. She buys a cat plushie and considers a lion with glasses for the council president, but Masachika suggests it might not be a good idea. As they walk back, they enter a tea shop to try different teas. While Masha samples various brewing methods, Masachika suddenly remembers how his parents separated when he was young. He chose to stay with his dad, while his sister Yuki stayed with their mom, causing the siblings to be separated. Masachika snaps back to reality and sees Masha in front of him looking worried. She tells him he looks troubled and immediately hugs him, stroking his hair. This completely shocks him as he feels a wave of nostalgia, wondering why this feels so familiar and comforting. His moment of reflection is cut short when he gets burned by a hot teacup. He is still left wondering why Masha's touch reminds him of his childhood. Later that day, they walked back to the student council room. The president immediately noticed the huge toy in Masha's arms and told her that the student council room wasn't a place for soft toys. Masha didn't seem to care and kept insisting she wanted to get him a lion. The president nervously checked the shopping bags to see what else Masha had bought, but to his relief, the rest of the items were just ordinary school supplies. He thanked Masachika for helping with the shopping as he didn't trust Masha to do it alone. Masachika understood, knowing Masha would have turned the council room into a theme park if left unsupervised. The president again asked Masachika to reconsider joining the student council, saying they needed capable people like him. Masha agreed, suggesting he should at least join on paper. Masachika asked why they were so determined to make him join. The president replied that Masachika had a special talent for organizing things, which was crucial for the student council. He praised Masachika for being an excellent vice president in junior school. Masachika explained that he didn't see any goals or ambitions of his that would be fulfilled by staying in that position. The president told him that goals didn't need to be perfectly aligned with efficiency. He confessed that he joined the council not to improve the school, but to win the heart of a girl he liked. He showed Masachika a picture of an insecure-looking overweight guy and revealed it was him 2 years ago. Masachika is shocked at Ken's incredible transformation. Ken tells him that 2 years ago, he was a loser with bad grades and no talent in sports. He fell in love with a beautiful girl named Sarah, the vice president, but she was out of his league. To become a viable match, he decided to better himself, and becoming the council president was a step toward that dream. His reason for joining the council was very selfish. Masha joins the conversation and tells Masachika that she joined the council because she was friends with Sasha and wanted to talk to her more. She explains that everyone has their own selfish reasons for joining the council, and that's completely fine. This changes Masachika's mind a little. Ken reassures him that it's perfectly fine to join the council even if his sole goal is to help someone become president. Masachika looks at a smiling Ken and asks for some time to think about it. He then realizes that Alya hasn't arrived yet. Ken tells him that she's probably late because she went to mediate a fight between the soccer and baseball teams over field use. Masachika leaves the council room wondering if he should check on Alya. Meanwhile, Alya is struggling as the soccer and baseball teams are at each other's throats, hurling insults like in a Call of Duty lobby. She tries to get them to talk politely and suggests one team uses smaller field by the river, but neither team is willing. They continue arguing and ignoring her. Alya realizes that she always worked alone and doesn't know how to deal with people or make them listen. Tears start rolling down her cheeks as she wonders if she is fit to be in the student council. Meanwhile, Masachika arrives and overhears the heated discussion. Seeing Alya struggling to mediate, he initially thinks it's good experience for her and is about to leave. However, he hears her call out for help in Russian, which only he understands. He decides to intervene, introducing himself as the student council member in charge of general affairs. Alya is surprised but relieved to see him. Masachika quickly takes control of the situation, suggesting that because the baseball team has fewer members, they should move to the smaller riverside field. In return, the soccer team will help them move their equipment. At first, both teams are uncertain about this compromise. However, the soccer team managers volunteer to help the baseball team move. Seeing the beautiful manager's willingness to help, the baseball team softened up and agreed to the compromise. Later that evening, Masachika and Alya start walking back. Masachika apologizes for getting involved in her matters. Alya teases him, saying she likes his involvement, and asks if he knew the managers would help the baseball team. Masachika smiles and explains that the baseball team captain is dating the soccer team manager. He wasn't saying much because he wanted to help his girlfriend, and the manager was confused because she knew the soccer team's demands were too much. Masachika says he found a middle ground that both the baseball captain and the manager would agree to, and the plan worked. Alya is impressed by his observation and quick thinking. They run into Ken, who asks if everything got sorted out. Masachika immediately realizes that Ken had planned this all along. Ken then asks Masachika for his decision about joining the council. Masachika takes a deep breath and says he is ready to join the student council, which surprises Alya. Ken tells him to come to the council immediately to get his joining form. Later that night, as they walk back, Alya asks Masachika if he is joining the council to help Yuki become the new president. Masachika asks what she would do if he did decide to help Yuki. Alya takes a deep breath and says she won't back down and will fight to become the new president. Masachika smiles and tells her that he has decided to help her become the new president, not Yuki. This catches Alya off guard. Masachika promises to help her become the president of the council no matter what, and offers her his hand. Alya wipes away her tears, takes his hand, and smiles at him, making Masachika feel something he hasn't felt since he met a blonde girl in his childhood. Suddenly, Alya twists Masachika's hand and asks if he is thinking about another girl, making Masachika sweat and wonder what to say. She specifically asks if he was thinking about Yuki, and he immediately denies it. However, Alya thinks he's lying and gives him a tight slap, knocking him to the floor. She then helps him up, and they continue walking back together. talking about everyday life, making jokes, and having fun. When they finally reach Alya's apartment and it's time to say goodbye, Alya asks if his cheek still hurts. Masachika says it's just stinging a little, but you should be fine since he has experience with getting pepper sprayed by girls. To relieve some of the pain, Alya plants a light kiss on his cheek, making him blush. As she walks away, she claims it was just a friendly kiss. Masachika stands there in disbelief, wondering why Alya is playing with his heart like this. Masachika is thinking about what happened with Alya and feels embarrassed. He recalls that Alya confessed she liked him, which might mean she was serious and not just joking. Masachika initially believes her words were sincere, but then convinces himself that it can't be true, thinking she was just caught up in the moment. He even imagines that she might regret it now and could be crying. This makes him remember a family argument where his mother accused his father of not coming home often due to work. Masachika feels uneasy and starts to believe that love is unpredictable and unreliable, thinking it's silly to worry about it. He also feels uncertain about his role in supporting Alya, especially since he distanced himself from his family and took on Yuki's surname. When Masachika arrives at his apartment, he's surprised to see Yuki's shoes because she had said she had other plans. He wonders if Yuki arranged the day's events to influence the student council. He then accidentally walks in on her in the bathroom, where she's barely covered by a towel. Yuki screams loudly, calling him a pervert, but Masachika stays calm and accuses her of setting it up on purpose. She admits it and asks if he's curious about why she did it. She explains that despite living together for years, they've never had a moment where he accidentally saw her changing, which she thinks every brother goes through at least once. Masachika dismisses her explanation, saying she's acting like a character from an anime, which offends her. Yuki then acts dramatically, pointing to an imaginary camera and saying this was her way of making up for what happened earlier. She teases Masachika about not being interested in her body, suggesting it shows how serious he is. Masachika, taking her seriously, says that blatant exposure doesn't excite him and that he finds subtlety more appealing. This surprises Yuki, as she hadn't thought of it that way. She keeps teasing him, saying he looked at her whole body, but he admits he only glanced at her chest, which leads her to jokingly call him a chest monster. After she gets dressed, Yuki follows Masachika to his room and asks if the student council president and Masha convinced him to join. He says they did and adds that he's supporting Alya for the presidency. After a brief silence, Yuki angrily accuses Alya of stealing her brother's attention, even joking about the size of their chests. Masachika, clearly uncomfortable, asks her to stop with the graphic comments. Yuki insists that he should appreciate smaller chests and even jokes about letting him touch hers, but then recalls that he accidentally grabbed her chest once in elementary school during a game. Masachika, embarrassed, brushes it off as a typical sibling situation. Yuki gets upset and asks for some affection, which he agrees to by gently brushing her hair. As they calm down, Yuki acknowledges the rivalry between them and apologizes for any discomfort, reassuring him that she knows he loves her dearly. They share a laugh and Yuki leaves the room alone. She feels a mix of surprise and sadness, realizing that someone else has motivated her brother, but she's determined not to lose to this new rival. The next morning, Masachika finds it strange that Yuki hasn't woken him up like she usually does. He wonders if yesterday's events have affected her. As he gets out of bed, he suddenly feels a hand grab his ankle, startling him. Yuki crawls out from under the bed, clearly not upset or anything like that. After a brief silence, she asks for his help to get unstuck. Instead of helping her right away, Masachika playfully wraps her in his sheets. Yuki complains about the smell, saying it stinks of man and that she's going to faint. In the classroom, Alya watches Masachika arrive, feeling puzzled by her own nervousness since he usually comes in looking half asleep. When Masachika greets her, she is surprised to see him looking unusually sharp. As she observes him more closely, she notices that he seems different and more attractive than usual, though she tries to brush it off, thinking he'll probably doze off soon. However, during class, she notices that he is staying focused, which confuses her and makes her wonder if he's really changing his behavior because of her. Later in the gym, Masachika gets hit on the head by a ball and steps outside for a break. Alya follows him to see if he's okay. Even though Masachika assures her it's nothing, she comes closer and checks their foreheads to see if he has a fever, which makes him nervous. Masachika can't help but notice her large bust, recalling the rumors about her cup size. Alya then lets her hair down, looking even more beautiful to him, making him wonder if she's doing it on purpose. He looks away but can't help sneaking another glance, confirming his preference for subtle views. A few minutes later, they go to get some water, and Masachika is again struck by how attractive Alya looks. To cool off, he dunks his head into the water. Masha arrives and offers him a towel, but when he refuses, she wraps him up and starts drying him off, giving him another unexpected view of a bust. This surprises Masachika as he's never experienced anything like it before. As they talk, Alya takes him to say goodbye to Masha, who remains kind despite not being entirely pleased. As they walk together, Misachika expects Alya to insult him like usual, but instead she asks if he's really okay, showing genuine concern for what happened earlier. Misachika tells her he's fine and doesn't have a bump, but when Alya reaches out to check, he steps back nervously and insists nothing is wrong. Confused by her kindness, he asks why she's being so nice. Alya explains that she noticed he's been down all day and is just worried about him. Suddenly, Misachika's stomach growls, breaking the moment. He explains that he skipped breakfast, which leads Alya to think he wasn't paying attention in class because he was too hungry. Annoyed, she reveals she had trouble sleeping after what happened, while Misachika seemed to sleep without a care. Her angry look intimidates Misachika, so he awkwardly changes the subject by quoting a proverb about turning the other cheek. Alya snaps back, calling him an idiot, and walks away, feeling her concern was wasted. Misachika, amused, thinks that Alya is still the same as ever. After class, Misachika asks if they can go to the student council office together. Alya, still annoyed, silently leads the way, clearly upset. When they get to the office, they see a group of students apologizing at the door. Misachika recognizes them as members of the football and baseball teams. As he tries to enter, a tough-looking girl blocks him. She quickly apologizes, saying she thought the athletes were causing trouble again. This girl is Shizaki Sarashina, the vice president known for handling disputes firmly, sometimes using her bamboo sword. Even though Misachika had heard about her, he now sees her strong presence for himself. Ken reassures Shizaki that she only threatened the athletes to keep things in order, which makes Shizaki complain about how he said it. Despite her tough look, Misachika finds them cute as a couple, but his impression changes when she gives him a rough pat on the shoulder. Masha arrives and Shizaki apologizes to Ken for being too harsh. Ken tells her he's tough enough to handle it. They share a moment that Misachika finds strangely sweet, leading Alya to quietly tell him to keep his thoughts to himself. Misachika jokes that if Shizaki wore a sash, they could call her Boss Sash, making Alya laugh. Masha comments on their good relationship just as Yuki arrives. Ken starts the student council meeting with everyone present. Misachika introduces himself as Masachi Kill, handling general affairs, and mentions that he and Alya are running in the upcoming elections. Alya looks at him dreamily while the president smiles and wishes him good luck. The president tells Misachika that since he was the vice president in junior school, he should quickly get the hang of it. However, for today, he's going to pair up with Masha because they are very short-staffed and need all the help they can get. Misachika agrees right away. Yuki smiles and tells the president that she needs to talk to the art club about the upcoming festival, and she would also need Alya's help because Alya is the treasurer and they need to discuss finances. This is a bit unusual because none of this had been talked about before, but Alya agrees to go right away. Both girls leave the room while Misachika wonders what kind of plan Yuki is coming up with, as he knows something is definitely going on. Misachika's suspicions are confirmed when Yuki takes Alya to a separate room where no one else is around. To ease the tension, Alya apologizes to Yuki for choosing Misachika as her partner for the upcoming elections. Yuki looks down and tells Alya not to worry, saying it wasn't her fault and that Misachika made his own choices. Although Yuki says she doesn't mind, she admits she would have been happier if Misachika had chosen her instead. Alya gathers her courage and asks Yuki how she feels about Misachika. To Alya's surprise, Yuki straightforwardly tells her that she loves Misachika more than anything else in the world, even more than her own parents. Alya is shocked when Yuki asks her if she likes Misachika as well. Alya blushes and looks down, saying that Misachika is just a friend. Yuki presses her further, asking if she's in love with him or not. Alya struggles to respond, and Yuki pushes her against the wall, claiming that she's already confessed her love for Misachika, and now it's Alya's turn to be clear. After a moment, Alya replies that while she doesn't know if she loves him, she won't let Yuki have him. Yuki smiles slyly and says that's enough for today, reminding her they have work to do, then leaves the room. Alya is left wondering what just happened. Meanwhile, back in the council room, Masha and Misachika spend their time cross-checking documents and making corrections as needed. Misachika realizes that Masha is really good at her job, but his attention drifts to Chiza, who struggles to even take out a book properly and ends up falling to the ground with all the books. Soon, Masha finishes her work and suggests they take a short tea break. She immediately gets up to make some black tea. Misachika asks her if Russians usually drink black tea in the summer. She explains that they mostly drink it in the winter, but because her mother is Japanese and loves black tea, they often drink it in the summer too. This makes Misachika think about how the girl he liked when he was younger also had a mother who loved black tea. Masha interrupts his thoughts by asking if he knows a lot about Russians. Misachika lies and says he's only watched a few movies, even though he actually studied a lot to learn about Russian culture. Masha then sits down next to him and starts eating spoonfuls of jam before each sip of tea, which is a Russian tradition. Masachika tries to eat the jam with his tea like Masha, but finds it too sweet for his taste. Soon after, Yuki and Alya return from their errand and Masha quickly goes to make tea for them as well. Alya seems a bit grumpy, but she moves her chair very close to Masachika and sits down, asking if he has any problem with it. Masachika immediately glances at Yuki and realizes she's up to something new, making him wonder what's going to happen. Masha cheerfully asks Alya if she has found any guys she likes and might want to marry, but Alya shakes her head and softly whispers in Russian that it's too early to think about marriage. Masachika looks at her as Masha places a large plate of jam in front of Alya, which she angrily starts eating. Soon the president dismisses everyone and Masachika walks home with Alya as the sun sets. He notices she seems stressed and wonders what Yuki told her. Deciding to do something about it, he invites her to a small cafe, suggesting they discuss the upcoming presidential election since they don't get much time during school. Alya whispers in Russian, asking if this is a date, which makes Masachika blush, but he pretends not to understand and enters the cafe with her. They sit down and she orders 2 large smoothies so she can post them on social media. Masachika decides to address the situation and asks if something happened with Yuki. Alya gives him an annoyed look and says nothing happened, which makes him even more certain that Yuki did something to upset her. Suddenly, Alya asks Masachika if he is dating Yuki, but he quickly denies it, joking that he would date his own mom before dating Yuki. Alya looks at him skeptically, so Masachika decides to explain further. He tells her that Yuki isn't as ladylike and innocent as she seems and that she's just teasing her. This makes Alya relax a little. Masachika then says they need to do something about Yuki, because they will definitely lose the election if they don't. Alya looks frustrated, but Masachika insists it's the truth. He explains that usually there are more candidates who compete in the election, and after a general meeting where candidates have a meaningless debate, many drop out because they realize they don't have enough support. Finally, the top 3 candidates are chosen to run in the election, and one is picked as the winner. Unfortunately, this time everyone assumes Yuki will win by default, so no one is interested in running against her. While Masachika is talking, Alya is completely distracted by how he's not even a little shy, even though they're alone in a cafe, making her wonder if he comes here with different girls all the time. She ends up biting her straw out of frustration before deciding to stress eat in front of him. This surprises Masachika, breaking his train of thought. Alya then decides to use a classic move, sharing the same spoon. She asks if Masachika wants a bite, and when he declines, she insists. She extends the spoon towards him, and when he asks for a different one, Alya tells him to stop complaining and open his mouth, saying this is normal in Russia. Masachika looks at her and realizes she's clearly lying, but he still opens his mouth and feels secretly thrilled at what he considers his first indirect kiss. Afterwards, they both return to being shy. Alya then asks what they should do to beat Yuki. Masachika tells her that last year the president wasn't even part of the student council, but still won the election because he had a solid plan. Masachika explains that at the beginning of the year, Ken was overweight and had average grades at best. However, as the year went on, he lost all the weight and improved his academics, which drew support from people who saw that Ken could achieve things through hard work. This way, Ken created a compelling story, which is essential for any election. Masachika orders some food and suggests that Alya should give a speech in front of the entire student body to win their support, and she agrees. When the food arrives, Masachika offers Alya a bite, and she eagerly agrees, but instead of sharing, he gives her a different spoon and bowl to eat from. The food is super spicy, and it makes her tear up. Later, while walking home at night, Alya asks Masachika if he knows who Yuki might partner with. Masachika replies that Yuki is popular and shouldn't have trouble finding a partner, but if she chooses Tan, it would be tough for them to win. Alya asks who Tan is, and Masachika explains that she was Yuki's opponent in junior school, who fought harder for the position but lost by a small margin. The next day, they meet again in the council room, and to their surprise, Yuki has already found a new partner. She enters with a glowing smile and reveals that her partner is Ayano from her class, who looks directly at Masachika, leaving him wondering why his sister is tormenting him so much. The next morning, when Masachika returns to school, Ayano approaches him and asks if he's really planning to run in the elections against Yuki. Masachika wonders what she's up to but replies that he is indeed going to compete, as he promised to do everything he can to help Alya become president. Ayano gives him a blank look and reminds him how strict his grandfather is about family matters. This leaves a bitter taste in Masachika's mouth as he recalls his grandfather constantly stressing the importance of family. He tells Ayano that Yuki is still the most important person in his life, and that he'll always support her. But at the same time, he's committed to helping Alya win the elections, and that's final. Ayano then asks if he has any message for his grandfather. Masachika responds angrily, saying if his grandfather has something to say, He should say it directly to him and leave Yuki out of it. After that, Misachika heads to his classroom, where his two friends who are obsessed with idols hand him a magazine full of idol pictures and ask which one he likes. Misachika replies that he's not interested in two-dimensional paper cutouts, but when they insist, he picks the girl with brown hair. One of his friends, the bald one, immediately jokes that the girl looks like Masha and asks if Misachika is into her. Misachika replies that she already has a boyfriend and is way out of his league anyway. Suddenly, Alya enters the classroom and notices Misachika holding the magazine. She gets angry and calls him an animal in Russian, asking why a student council member would bring something like that to school. Misachika quickly explains that Taki, the single brain cell guide, brought the magazine, not him. Alya, still annoyed, doesn't care and sits down. Meanwhile, Taki, who's not the brightest, asks if Misachika would like to date Yuki. Misachika jokes that they're not in Alabama, so no, and adds that he wants a girl who can also be his best friend. Alya smiles and says in Russian that she can be his best friend too. The others notice and ask why he's acting strange. He tries to change the subject, but Taki doesn't get the hint and keeps talking about how a girl should have a cute smile and be friendly. Misachika sees that Alya is bothered by this, so he gently tells her to be more considerate. Taki then blurts out that personality doesn't matter as long as the girl is as pretty as Alya. This is the worst thing he could have said because Alya, being a strong and independent woman, gets in his face and tells him that guys like him will never find a real girlfriend. She then takes the magazine away from him. Later that day, all the student council members gather in the council room. The girls decide to gamble using Kit Kats, as it's something that's apparently common in Russia. Yuki tries to win everything from Alya, so that Alya is left with only cheap Russian knockoff snacks. Alya holds her own in the game since she's good at bluffing, making it hard for Yuki to read her moves. Meanwhile, Sarah, Ken, and Misachika sit at another table, keeping score. Ken remarks that he expected Alya to be more composed, but she seems easy to read, which Yuki is taking advantage of. Misachika chuckles, saying that Yuki is at her best in mind games like this. Sarah then comments that she never knows what Masha is thinking since Masha always has a sweet, angelic smile, but it feels like she's a flawless Russian goddess. Ken laughs, but then asks about Ayano's connection to Yuki. Misachika explains that Ayano serves Yuki's family, just like her grandparents did. Surprised, Sarah asks if Ayano's parents also work for Yuki's family. Ayano shakes her head, explaining that her parents are office workers and she chose this path because she admired her grandparents' dedication. She almost reveals that Misachika and Yuki are siblings, but Misachika quickly covers for her and reminds her to be careful, as no one at school knows about their family connection. Ken gets curious and asks if Ayano had special training for this role. Ayano nods, saying her grandparents taught her to stay out of the spotlight and always work behind the scenes to ensure the person she serves never faces any problems. Masha soon joins Misachika and the others at their table and sits down next to him, asking Ayano to refill her cup. She mentions that Alya sent her away because she wanted to play alone. They all glance at Yuki and Alya, who are completely focused on their game, while Misachika comments that Alya seems to be having fun. When the juice they were sharing runs out, Misachika and Masha volunteer to go get more drinks and ask everyone what they want. Each person asks for a different drink, but Misachika remembers all the orders after hearing them just once, which impresses everyone as he heads out of the room with Masha. As they walk together at sunset, Masha thanks Misachika for supporting Alya in the election, saying it really means a lot. Misachika tells her she doesn't need to be so grateful, but Masha insists that it's special since Alya usually refuses help because she doesn't like relying on others. But this time, Alya is willing to accept help. Misachika bluntly asks if Masha purposely acts a bit ditzy around Alya. Masha is surprised but then smiles, saying she doesn't want to compete with her sister because she knows how hardworking Alya is. This makes Misachika think about his own sister, Yuki, who seems so elegant at school but turns into a total nerd at home. He decides that the real Yuki is the one at home, not the image she shows at school. Masha then asks why Misachika pretends to be lazy when he's actually very responsible. Caught off guard, Misachika explains that he tries to act lazy so people won't depend on him, avoiding disappointment. Masha warmly pats him on the head, telling him he's doing well, which makes Misachika feel like a pet, but also kind of happy. The next morning, Alya is confronted by Tan, Yuki's old rival, who stops her in the middle of school and accuses her of dragging Misachika to her side out of desperation. Alya is taken aback and doesn't know how to respond as Tan asks if she's afraid she would lose if Misachika teamed up with Yuki. The scene draws a crowd, embarrassing Alya even more. Alya insists that Misachika chose to be on her team, but Tan doesn't believe it. Thankfully, Misachika arrives at the right moment and tells Tan to back off as he indeed chose to run with Alya, and Yuki knows of this and doesn't mind either. He tells Tan to apologize to Alya, but Tan walks straight up to him and challenges Masachika to a presidential debate. She claims that people like Masachika shouldn't have a place in the student council, let alone the elections, but Alya intervenes, telling her to back off and that if she wants to debate Masachika, she'll have to go through her first, which makes Tan challenge both of them to a presidential debate at once. The next scene opens with Masachika and Alya talking about the upcoming school congress debate with Ken. The main issue is about whether teachers should be involved in reviewing council members, and Masachika realizes that he might be singled out because of his bad reputation with the teachers. Ken wonders if they should even go through with it, doubting it will do any good. Alya argues that if they win, it will make their candidacy legitimate. She also brings up that Masachika insulted her, so she plans to make him take it back and apologize. Seeing a silver lining, Masachika notes that this will give him a chance to present his candidacy before the closing ceremony. He agrees with their decision and plans to make an announcement by the end of the day. Yuki offers to help with the announcement and wishes Masachika and Alya good luck. Later, Masachika and Alya talk about their strategy. Masachika points out where Tan, their opponent, is likely to focus based on what he knows about her. Alya shares her counter-strategy, which Masachika agrees with but suggests could be made shorter. Alya then asks about Masachika's past relationship with Tan. He explains that while they once respected each other when they worked together, he doesn't know why she now thinks he's just trying to cause trouble. He admits that Tan might believe he's only in this to stir things up. Alya realizes that Tan might be referring to her when she talks about another person and thinks she might be part of the problem. Even so, she reassures Masachika that she's committed to helping him win. The next day, as they get ready for the debate, Tan's debate partner, Nano Ami, approaches Masachika. She warns him that she won't take part in the debate, which explains why she seems so calm. After meeting Alya, Nano leaves and Masachika explains that Nano is Tan's childhood friend and one of the most popular students in the school, with connections to the upper levels of the school. He advises Alya to keep her focus on Tan during the debate. As the debate is about to start, Alya steps onto the stage, facing a huge crowd. She worries about whether she can handle it, remembering how she was ignored the last time. But she decides to push forward, motivated by her promise to Masachika. Meanwhile, the students are whispering among themselves, doubting Alya's ability to give a good speech and expecting that Tan will easily defeat her. Feeling immense pressure, Alya suddenly hears Masachika asking her an unexpected question about her cup size. Her eyes go wide as she quickly covers herself, asking if he really thinks it's appropriate to ask something like that. At that moment, Masachika explains that there's no better time to ask since Alya can't hit him in front of so many people. He then clarifies that he asked to distract her and to see if she's calmer now. He points out that she's not really facing Tan, but rather an idealized version of her past self. He advises Alya to stop aiming for perfection and instead focus on what feels right to her. He reassures her that if things get tough, he'll handle it. These words help Alya regain her focus as Ken starts the school congress. Ken announces that the motion up for debate is proposed by Tan Tanama, with Alya and Masachika. The topic is about whether teachers should have more control over who gets into the council. When Tan takes the stage, she argues that the current council system, where anyone can run for leadership, has led to unqualified people getting into power. She presents data from past council members collected by Nano, showing that this has been a problem for the past 3 years. Tan suggests that only those recommended by teachers with real talent should be allowed in the council and asks the students to support this change. Tan's speech gets loud applause, and many students doubt Alya will be able to counter such a strong argument. When it's Alya's turn to speak, she remembers Masachika's advice to do what she believes is right. With newfound clarity, she argues against Tan's motion, saying it could actually do more harm than good by weakening the school council's authority. Alya explains that the motion would take away the president and vice president's right to appoint key council members, who are elected by the students through a competitive process. By reducing their power, the motion would undermine the council's integrity and the democratic process that gives these leaders their privileges. Alya goes on to say that the president and vice president's main responsibility is to choose their council members. Giving teachers any control over this would suggest that the school council can't operate independently from the faculty, which goes against the school's belief in respecting student autonomy. She questions what would happen if the council was made up entirely of members chosen by the teachers, pointing out that this would remove the president and vice president's ability to select trustworthy peers and resist undue influence from the faculty. As Alya speaks, Masachika watches the students, noticing that both Tan and Alya's arguments are resonating with them, causing a split in opinions. He notes with pride that Alya is holding her own without his help. After Alya finishes her speech, she receives a good amount of applause from the students. Ken then starts the debate with Tan speaking first. Tan repeats that the school board has been accepting all volunteers lately, which she believes could lead to poor performance. Alya responds by asking for specific examples of problems caused by this, as she hasn't seen any. Tan argues that teacher review is necessary to prevent these issues, but Alya insists that this decision should be left to the president and vice president. She admits that these leaders can ask teachers for help if needed, but it shouldn't be forced on them. As Tan begins to feel cornered, Misachika realizes that Tan has underestimated Alya because she was too focused on him. Tan then tries a different approach, asking what would happen if the president and vice president abused their power. Before Alya can reply, other students start to agree with Tan, questioning whether someone unfamiliar with the school could truly understand its unique needs. Misachika notices that this sudden change in the students' opinions was likely influenced by Nano, Tan's partner. Alya, overwhelmed by the pressure and losing her train of thought, starts to blank out. Noticing her distress, Misachika steps in, gently patting her back and reassuring her that she's done a great job. He then takes over at the podium, joking that Alya's vocal cords aren't used to talking so much because she's usually quiet. He tells the audience he wants to wrap things up quickly so Alya can rest, and then asks a key question. Is this debate really necessary when the students have already made their choice by electing Ken as president? Misachika reminds everyone that Ken was once an underperforming student who barely stood out, yet they trusted him enough to lead. Ken, who worked hard to become a strong candidate for presidency, emphasizes that his success was only possible because the current system allows anyone with a desire and determination to lead the council. With nothing more to add, Ken moves to the closing statements and asks Tan if she's satisfied with how things turned out. Instead of answering, Tan runs off and Alya decides to follow her. Nano hints that they will withdraw their motion, leading Ken to officially close the school congress. Afterward, we get a glimpse into Tan's thoughts. She reflects on how she once believed that Misachika and Yuki were the perfect pair with an unbreakable bond, which made her feel envious but also accept her defeat because of their connection. However, seeing Misachika with Alya now makes her feel betrayed. Alya catches up to Tan and stops her. Tan tearfully asks why it had to be her, explaining that she accepted her loss because she believed Misachika and Yuki were special. Now she feels confused and betrayed. Alya encourages her not to keep her feelings bottled up, but Tan insists she has no right to say anything. She admits that she feels foolish for putting Misachika and Yuki on a pedestal and trusting them completely, only to feel hurt when her expectations weren't met. A little later, Nano arrives to apologize to Alya and assures her that she'll take care of Tan. Before they part, Alya tells Tan that even she doesn't fully understand why Misachika chose her, but she's determined to prove it was the right choice. As Nano leads Tan away, she thinks that Alya is a good person and understands why Misachika chose her. Nano advises Tan to apologize to Misachika and Alya when she's ready, and Tan agrees. Meanwhile, Yuki watches from a booth on stage, noticing that Misachika could have ended the debate quickly, but chose not to. Yuki thinks that Misachika's lack of a killer instinct will eventually be his downfall. When Ayano praises Misachika and Alya for doing well, Yuki dismisses her opinion, criticizing them for being overconfident and underestimating their rivals. Later, Alya tells Misachika about her conversation with Tan and asks why he chose her over Yuki. Misachika explains that he initially partnered with Yuki because he felt guilty and couldn't refuse her help. He felt trapped by his guilt, thinking that was the main reason he stayed by her side. Unlike others who are motivated by dreams, Misachika admits he was driven by guilt, which he finds pathetic. But this time, he ran for vice president by his own choice, not out of guilt, but because he genuinely wanted to be Alya's partner. He hopes she understands what he means, though he struggles to express it clearly. Alya laughs and says she wishes she could understand him better, but Misachika doesn't let this bother him. Instead, he turns the question back on her, asking why she chose to run with him. Alya leans in close and explains her reasons to him in Russian. After a moment, Misachika pretends he didn't understand and asks her what she said, but Alya just laughs and walks away, keeping her reasons a secret. As they prepare to leave the building, Alya brings up the earlier comment about her breast size, making Misachika nervous. He awkwardly explains that a girl he knows mentioned it, and Alya responds in Russian, saying it's kind of true, leaving Misachika puzzled and unable to stop thinking about what she meant. That night, Yuki talks with her grandfather, the family's head, about the school congress. He knows that Misachika and members of Tanama Industries were involved and that Tan had competed against Yuki in the middle school student council elections. He had high hopes for Yuki, but found out that she withdrew from the debate. Even though her reasons are unclear, it made Misachika's campaign seem more credible. Her grandfather tells Yuki that it doesn't matter who her opponent is, she cannot afford to lose. He admits that while Yuki might not be as naturally talented as Misachika, she should remember that, like Uncle Ben said, with great power comes great responsibility. Yuki's mother, who seems regretful, asks if Yuki still gets along with her brother. Yuki says yes and asks if her mother wants to know anything about him. Her mother says no but recalls that Yuki has Chinese lessons and wishes her good luck. Later in her room with Ayano, Yuki asks if she can hug her, and after Ayano agrees, Yuki presses her face against Ayano's chest. Yuki feels better afterward, joking that nothing beats a good hug. The next day at school, Yuki's classmates talk to Masachika about his success in the school congress. Masachika notices that Alya seems upset, so he steers the conversation to give Alya credit for the win, but the others don't seem too interested in talking to her. Masachika then encourages others to ask Alya questions, but when the group starts saying bad things about Tan, Alya gets upset and leaves the room. Masachika follows her to the student council room to talk privately. He asks Alya if it bothers her when people make fun of Tan. He reminds her that while they both know why she did what she did, others don't. He says their opponents fought fairly, so there's no need to tell others that criticizing Tan is wrong. Alya agrees but mentions that Tan wasn't beaten, she withdrew. Masachika explains that if they don't maintain appearances, their victory in the Congress won't mean much. He suggests they focus on what's best for them, but also says that what really matters is what Alya wants to do. Hearing this, Alya shows interest in helping Tan and Masachika offers to assist her, agreeing to smooth things over before the closing ceremony. Alya apologizes, knowing this will create more work for him, but he reassures her, reminding her that he promised to help her with everything. This makes Alya happy, but just then, Masachika notices movement in a desk chair and discovers that Kanaki and Chizaki were hiding there. Masachika finds the situation amusing, like something out of a romantic comedy. Alya, embarrassed, starts getting closer to Masachika, making him feel awkward, so he distracts himself by asking Kanaki and Chizaki how long they've been hiding. Alya is surprised to realize they were there the whole time. The two students awkwardly explain that they were looking for something and didn't have a chance to leave, but their excuse isn't convincing. As they leave, Alya, clearly flustered, says a quick goodbye and hurries away, deeply embarrassed. Later, Masachika goes to find Nano in her classroom and asks to speak with her privately. She jokingly suggests that if he wants to ask her out, she's available, if she assumes that's not the real reason he's there. This surprises Masachika, and he wonders if she would actually be okay with him confessing his feelings to her. Nano explains that she said that because she's currently single and wouldn't mind if it were him, but Masachika gently advises her to date someone she truly likes. Nano then admits that she's never dated someone she genuinely liked because she doesn't really understand love and relationships. She even believes it's something all women struggle with. Masachika is concerned that she thinks this way, and despite not wanting to get too involved in her personal life, he tells her not to undervalue herself. This surprises Nano because Tan had told her the same thing before. Changing the topic, Masachika brings up how people are speaking badly about Tan and asks if there's a way to stop it. He clarifies that it doesn't bother him personally, but it does upset someone close to him. Nano questions why he's bringing this up with her, especially since she's supposed to be his enemy and because she knows he's aware that she planted people in the audience. Masachika doesn't deny knowing this, even though it risked his friendship with Alya. Nano responds that she only cares about Tan, so she wasn't worried about losing other friends. Masachika then talks about how Tan's passion is something that should be a mystery to her, but he's curious why she cares so much. Nano explains that this is exactly why she stays close to Tan, because she's drawn to someone with a passion she herself lacks. In the end, Nano agrees to help Masachika. He shares his plan. They need to start a rumor that gives a valid reason for Sayaka's withdrawal from the debate. He knows this might affect their victory, but he's okay with that. Nano agrees to handle it. After she leaves, Masachika, thinking about ninjas, suddenly mentions the name Anna, and she unexpectedly appears behind the desk, startling him. Yuki is also there, being curious. She explains that she saw him approach Nano, who is supposed to be their enemy, so she wanted to see what was going on. However, when Alya arrives and sees the three of them together, she gets the wrong idea and leaves in anger. At this point, Nano recalls a time when Tan slapped her and told her to stop undervaluing herself. The reason for the slap was that Tan had caught Nano kissing another guy, which made Tan furious. When Nano returns to her classroom to talk to their friends, she explains that Masachika wanted to discuss something related to Tan. When Nano's friends mention that Tan withdrew from the debate, Nano takes the opportunity to explain that Tan did it because she was angry with her. The reason for Tan's anger was that she found out Nano had planted people in the audience during the Congress. Meanwhile, Masachika tries to explain to Alya that he just happened to run into Yuki and Nano, but Alya doesn't believe him. Changing the subject, he asks if she wants to study together after classes. She agrees, though Masachika is a bit surprised because it's unusual for her to want to study. In the student council room, Masachika notices that Alya is sitting quite close to him. When he asks if it bothers her, She responds that it doesn't bother her, so he just has to accept it, hoping no one else sees them this way. As if on cue, Yuki and Ayano walks in and see them studying together. Yuki asks if she can join, but Alya refuses in Russian. Later, Alya notices that Masachika is just reading the solutions instead of solving the problems. Curious, she asks if that will help him prepare for the exams. He explains that he finds it pointless to stress over problems he doesn't understand, so he prefers to memorize the solutions instead. Seeing that Alya still doesn't fully understand, Yuki reassures her, saying Masachika has always been like this, and Ayano obediently agrees. A few minutes later, Masachika offers to help Ayano with anything she doesn't understand in the homework. Noticing their interaction, Alya asks if they're really just childhood friends because they seem unusually close. Before Masachika can respond, Masha arrives, greets everyone, and quickly ends up serving them tea. Masha then notices a book on the table about hypnosis and excitedly asks Alya to try it on her because she wants to be hypnotized. Alya refuses, but Masha keeps insisting, so she turns to Masachika, who agrees to give it a try. After reading the instructions, Masachika asks Masha to focus on his finger and says the typical hypnosis phrase about falling into a deep sleep after a clap. To his surprise, Masha actually falls asleep after the clap. Unsure what to do, Masachika decides to undo the hypnosis by touching her shoulder to wake her up. When Masha wakes up, she asks why he stopped because he said he was going to clap. Masachika asks if she really doesn't remember anything, but Masha seems confused, implying she doesn't know what happened. Alya, still skeptical, suggests trying it on her so they can see if Masha is telling the truth. Alya positions herself, determined to prove it's all a trick. But after Masachika does the same routine and claps, Alya falls into a deep sleep, surprising everyone. Seeing this, Yuki realizes they have a chance to have some fun and declares it's time for an improvisation game where the theme is that Masachika has hypnotized two beautiful girls. The first suggestion is to make them strip and undress. The two open their eyes and stand up, something Yuki didn't expect. Both approach Masachika, but instead of doing what was suggested, Masha starts stroking his and Alya's heads, leaving everyone confused. Yuki is surprised that Masha has unintentionally created a harem around Masachika. Suddenly, Alya starts taking off her clothes, revealing her underwear, and Masha begins doing the same. Yuki remembers that she told them to undress both physically and mentally, and they are following through. Masachika, realizing things are getting out of hand, tries to wake Alya up by touching her shoulder, but it doesn't work, and she continues unbuttoning her shirt. He tries the same with Masha, but she doesn't wake up either. To make matters worse, Shizaki walks in at that moment and asks what's going on. Yuki explains that they were following the hypnosis book's instructions but now can't wake them up. Understanding the situation, Shizaki steps in front of Alya and Masha and makes a quick motion with her hands, causing both of them to fall to the ground. Masachika is shocked, so Shizaki explains that she just reset them. A few seconds later, Alya and Masha slowly wake up and Yuki suggests they get dressed before explaining what happened. As soon as they realize they're half naked, they scream in embarrassment. This wraps up the 9th episode of Alya Sometimes Hides Her Feelings in Russian Recap. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe.